exactly.
I'm going to let Bill take over here.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Flanagan. I'm with the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, which is a very long name for an economic and community development organization that serves the 10 counties of southwestern Pennsylvania. And it's our pleasure to help present this conference every year and to welcome those of you from the Middle East all the way here to Pittsburgh, and of course to welcome those of you from outside our region here as well. Clearly there's exciting things going on, and we're excited to share those with you, and also to have an opportunity to share perspectives and insights from outside southwestern Pennsylvania as well. Our panel is really going to dig into some of the nitty-gritty about doing business in the Middle East, some of the ins and outs, and we've got one old hand here who's been there, done that, lived that, who can give us hopefully some more stories and also some lessons learned in terms of what that's been like over his career. And another one who represents many, many different kinds of businesses and has an opportunity to represent their interests in the Middle East. So here on my right is Mr. Khush Choksy. He's the Senior VP of Middle East and Turkey Affairs for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He directs the development and implementation of policies and programs that promote U.S. trade and investment to markets in the region. Prior to his tenure with the Chamber, Choksy was director at Chemonix International, where he led teams developing economic ties between the United States and the Middle East. So you also have been there, done that, and tried to make it happen. On my left, George Howard is the chairman of Assist America, which is the nation's largest provider of international emergency services through employee benefit plans, and I will get him to tell you what that all means and how that works. He spent about 20 years in international insurance in Latin America and other parts of the world as well, and we're very pleased to have both of them here. Find out a little bit more about what it's like to do business over there and some of the rewards, as well as maybe some of the pitfalls, or at least things you need to be looking for. Well, George, first though, I'm going to get you to tell us a little bit more about Assist America. What is it you guys do exactly?
I'll tell you part of it.
Okay. Well, we only have 30 minutes.
Yeah. As you said, it's an international emergency services company. So what we do is similar. There are other companies in Europe that do this. The most prominent one, I think, would be Europe Assistance. The people traveling get sick, they have an accident, something goes wrong, and a company like ours intervenes very vigorously and solves the problem. About 90%, probably more than 90% of what we do is medical emergencies. So in fact, our operations people in Princeton are keenly aware of which hospitals we should evacuate people to. Obviously, it's a matter of getting things done very quickly. We actually have operation centers. The big one is in Princeton, but we have them also in China and the Philippines, Thailand, India. And we actually do the Middle East operations from Princeton. So, funny enough, which is mostly doctors and nurses there who are natives of the Middle East. I think everybody who's ever had an emergency at all wants to be treated by someone who speaks their language, not just speaking their language, but speaking it accentless. You don't want to be worried about, are you being understood by the doctor or by the nurse? So we actually have a lot of talent in the Princeton area, and that's the way we use it. We cover, actually, it's 31 million people now. And for me, the reason I wanted to go to the Middle East was that when I was first, I worked for a big insurance company, and my boss was Lebanese. Very tough guy, as a matter of fact. We all have whip marks on our backs who used to work for him. Very tough guy, and he told me once, go. And that was in 1978. And I just fell in love with the place. I love it. I still love going there. I ended up in Dubai in August. I think in Fahrenheit degrees, it was 107 degrees. And I still enjoy it. I like it. And I can tell you that as far as does it make business sense, for 20 years, well, no, that's wrong, for 15 years, I was out there trying to do business. And I like to say that I believe I made every single possible mistake that anybody could make in trying to get business going in the Middle East, and finally found the right way to do it. And that was about 10 years ago. And our clients out there are the biggest private insurance companies in the region. And I'm glad that we're there. I'm looking forward to going back there again in January. If you have any questions of me about the Middle East going forward, I'd be very happy to answer them. You probably won't always get the right answer because I made lots of mistakes before I did the right thing, but that's Assist America.
Well, I want to come back and we'll talk to you about some of those mistakes you've made and what you've learned, and maybe we can share a few of those lessons.
Can't tell all of them.
I know, we don't have enough time. We've had it for 20 years. We've only got 25 minutes, but we'll go back and pick up some of them. I guess from the standpoint of the U.S. Chamber, why don't you tell me a little bit more and tell us a little bit more about what you do and kind of the role you play and what the services the Chamber can provide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Simon Curtis and your team at the American Middle East Institute for making this possible. The U.S. Chamber is the world's largest business association. We represent, through our Federation of State and Local Chambers, of which you are also a member, your organization as well, 2,500 state and local chambers, a total of 3 million American companies. In the Middle East, we are focused on really two things: facilitating American businesses to avail themselves of the opportunities in the Middle East, and in that also, ensuring that the policy environment is both fair and conducive to international business, and conversely, making sure that our own policy environment here is fair and conducive to companies from the Middle East that seek to engage with American businesses. In the health sector has been one of the most promising sectors for us and American companies throughout the region, and we have been actively engaged on, we heard Basma and Samir's prior session where they talked about Saudi Arabia. Wonderful example of a country looking at the macroeconomic, the structural constraints to developing a modern health sector and moving very rapidly. One recent example was that they had the Saudi FDA align itself, which it already had aligned itself with international best practice. But if a certain product was approved by the FDA in Europe, for example, or in the US, they're now looking at reciprocity and automatic approval in Saudi Arabia. Another example of a change they did was they changed their regulations to allow what they call scientific officers to be able to do things that prior to that only doctors in Saudi Arabia could do. So broadly, health policy is one area that the countries in the region are looking at, and that makes it more conducive to American companies, but it also develops their health sector very rapidly. You're also seeing American hospital chains throughout the region. The Cleveland Clinic, for example, in Abu Dhabi. You have American educational institutions in places like Qatar. In Egypt, you're seeing we have a policy dialogue, nascent as it is, starting with the Egyptian Ministry of Health. So that you put together American companies, local companies, you put together American associations such as pharma, the local counterparts in the countries, their private sector and our private sector, to a dialogue that looks at the menu of issues that need to be resolved, a strategy for resolving them, a certain set of priorities, and then what the policymakers in those countries gain from that exercise is they have a roadmap that if they did certain things, then in return you would have certainly American investment, you'd certainly have a population whose health needs are better addressed much more rapidly.
So the U.S. Chamber can act as kind of a convener or at least an intermediary, kind of helping pull that discussion together country by country around some of these policy issues?
Exactly. I mean, the U.S. Chamber one of the major things we do is we are a convener, and then we look at the policies and how you could have a better policy environment that facilitates business. So we have this dialogue going in Saudi Arabia. As I said, we are leading a big business mission to Egypt next week. There's some flyers out there that Simon was kind enough for us to bring, allow us to bring here today. But it's over 50 American companies. We have meetings with President Sisi, the Prime Minister, the entire government, including the Ministry of Health. And one of the goals in there is to start that dialogue in Egypt. In Qatar, in other countries in the region, we have similar mechanisms. Each country has a slightly different focus. Certainly, there's a different set of issues that need to be addressed to develop the population, the health outcomes in their populations and make the policy environment more conducive to our businesses.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've learned at these conferences over the last 9 years, that in the United States we paint the Middle East with this broad uniform brush, but there's actually a bunch of different countries and in different places in terms of their capacity. So you talked a little bit about Saudi Arabia, you talked a little bit about Egypt, Saudis apparently being farther along the way. Which countries are most ready to go, kind of ready just for American companies to hit the ground, especially in the healthcare space, where it's the most seamless right now? Certainly, Egypt has a tremendous amount of potential. Saudi Arabia has made a tremendous amount of progress, but there are other countries as well. I mean, certainly the United Arab Emirates is, home to more American companies in terms of the headquarters for the region than any of the other countries. They have a relatively well-developed advanced system with both, UAE facilities, but also American facilities. You have a very streamlined and functional government there. In Qatar, they're looking at sports medicine. They've invested a lot of money in terms of sporting events, and they're looking at enhancing their sports medicine facilities. Hopkins, for example, has university presence in Doha. So different countries with different certain focuses, but they're all very conducive. And all of our major American companies, both on the biomedical side and on the medical device side, have a presence in the Middle East. It's interesting. I think it's a little bit of a strategic decision to make. Do you go into one of those countries where they've got the policy environment in place, but there's probably also a lot of American competition already there?
Sure.
Or do you go into one of these countries that's not quite as far along, but you might be the first organization in? Do you see that kind of weighing going on?
To some extent, but in most of the markets that I talked about, American companies are already there, and so are the European companies. Medical devices, Siemens is there just as much as GE or Medtronic or any of those other companies. And certainly in the pharmaceuticals, you also see competition from East Asia coming in. But I think that the U.S. products are seen as the gold standard. And certainly seen as superior in providing timely outcomes.
So despite the global competition, the U.S. is still has a great opportunity there.
I'm not sure we could take competition for granted, but absolutely.
Okay, yeah. And so have you seen it evolve since the time you started to engage with the Middle East in terms of the character of doing business, the opportunities that you've seen there?
Well, that's a good question. I don't, of the regions, I'd go practically everywhere in the world. I just got back 2 weeks ago from being gone for 4 months. And in our company, we get to see everything. We know where the good facilities are, where places we would not want to necessarily evacuate to. But I don't know a region that has changed so much in the time that I've been going there than the region that we call the Middle East. When first time I ever went to Riyadh, I remember I was there for about a week, and the whole time I was there was a cloud over the city, and it was from construction that was going. I mean, everything was being constructed. I never saw anything like that in my life. Then I went to UAE, which I guess was pre-UAE, but it was Dubai. That was a sleepy little place. I stayed in those of you who know Dubai, I stayed in the Hyatt, I guess it's the Hyatt Regency that's the farthest one away. I think it took 9 minutes or something to get there. I think it's about, depending on the time of day, 35 minutes maybe to get over there now. Dubai, there's a big sign in the airport in Dubai that says 25 years ago there were, I think it was 9 high-rise buildings in Dubai, and today there are over 900. The place is it's like you stepped onto another planet. If you if you were there like I was in '78 and have seen some of these changes happen, unbelievable place. Of course, a lot of this it presented challenges. It's not like all of this just happened without it just sprang up, but it is the place that I would say has changed more than any other place. Many of the places I go, and I better not name them now because I'll get in trouble. Somebody will quote me on it and I'll get in trouble. But if you made that same trip in 1978 and then went back today, you wouldn't see much different at all. The Middle East is totally different.
So then how has that changed the way you approach doing business there, the way you think about it? There
was a time when, I mentioned, I was talking about what our company does and what we do that's different from everybody else. I guess everybody has their little groove. What we do is that we offer it as an employee benefit. So everybody is covered. An insurance company will come along and they've maybe got 1 million people who are insured with that. We cover everybody. And there are no chargebacks either to the insurance company or to the person who's being treated. But nonetheless, we perform the same services as other companies. There was a time when, if you had a patient in Abu Dhabi, you might have to evacuate them to Switzerland or London or Paris, and we try to always be culturally sensitive about things like that. You don't want to take a French speaker, a native French speaker, and evacuate him to the UK. I can't even understand the English there myself. That's not necessary now. There are great medical facilities throughout the region. People can be treated locally. We have, our medical director is a graduate of UPMC Medical School. And I think for a lot of reasons we gravitate towards using facilities that they have confidence in. But the fact is that medicine has changed an awful lot. Saudi Arabia, we've been talking about Saudi Arabia this morning. If we had sick people anywhere within 3, 4, 5 hours, we would evacuate to Saudi Arabia, and so would the other companies that are in our business, if the visa problem could be handled. But you can't, if you have time constraints, you're under a lot of pressure, you have to get a sick patient to the right medical facility, and if you have to wait too long for a visa, which you do have to do in Saudi Arabia, you can't use Saudi Arabia. But there are great facilities in that country. I mean, I think maybe Saudi Arabia was the first, as far as I remember, that really had facilities that you could evacuate anybody to. So it's a different region like that. Again, there are other parts of the world where you've got the same problem. We have to take people out of these places, and an evacuation is not easy on a patient. It's not like flying first class on Emirates or something. And so it's for us to see those kind of facilities in the region, and there are a lot of them. That's been a big change for us.
So when you think about challenges, you mentioned the visa issue in Saudi Arabia. What are the bumps in the road these days when you think about it? And think about it not just from the perspective of your company, but any kind of business that's looking at the Middle East. What are some of the things they should be thinking about?
I think anybody, I was an expatriate myself for 24 years. I lived in different parts of the world. The only part of that region that I actually lived in was I lived in Tehran at one time. But everybody, any company who's thinking of sending an employee anywhere will be aware of what's going to happen, what kind of medical facilities do they have. You send somebody to I better not start naming countries, but you want to send an employee to a place which has less than optimal medicine, and you may not send them. You may not go there. You may not develop that market the way you'd like to do it. But that's not an issue in the Middle East. It's just not. It's one of the first things you're going to think about. It's one of the most important things. The guy is going home to tell his family he's been promoted. He's going to be living in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Qatar.
So you really feel pretty good about kind of the whole,
Absolutely.
the whole
And
Middle East.
we do
That kind of
evacuate people
confidence.
to those places, and again, Saudi Arabia, we would certainly do it if we could solve that visa problem. I was interested to hear that discussion about visas this morning.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we're talking about visas as one of the bumps. What are some of the other issues that American businesses might want to think about as they think about the Middle East?
Certainly in the health sector, the state is the largest, procurement agent for medical goods and services. And increasingly, they are trying to privatize these systems in the region. And I think that certainly will remain a challenge because you have a very young population base with, very high prevalence of diseases such as diabetes and things akin to that. One of the things that the Chambers launched is a global health program that is bringing together insurance companies like MetLife and others, corporations, both American and domestic in these countries, and instituting programs that can be replicated that we often take for granted here in that, simple medical check. So we are organizing a clinic in December in Saudi Arabia where a company will be showcased for having its employees, have a blood prick and a test so that they do these on a regular basis, and that will help, prevent diseases and then get into education related to lifestyle choices that could be helpful as well. So in terms of problems, certainly the increased private sector management of the health system or privatization. You certainly have large private sector hospital chains in some areas of the region, but not throughout. That's one. The second is many of these countries are instituting health insurance programs. Qatar, for example, is coming up with a health insurance program and as those programs can certainly be beneficial because they could provide greater access to a broader swath of the population. However, the fact and how they do them, how they get them right, that's important.
And so that's an evolving space.
Because it'll have, certainly as it has here, certainly an impact on the health system.
Are you seeing that in the world you live in with the insurance companies you work with in the Middle East? A lot of change happening over there?
I don't know. I would say yes and no. We cover in the Middle East most of the big insurance companies. We cover and in Saudi Arabia, MedGulf I believe is the largest private insurance company in Saudi Arabia. We cover Daman, the national health plan in Abu Dhabi. We cover MedNet, if you know that company, in the UAE. Qatar Insurance. It was interesting to me when I first got there to realize that the market we were looking at in the Middle East with those insurers was very similar to the American market. You have a lot of people out there that I know they know the United States very well. They know Europe very well. A lot of them have been educated here, or maybe they've been educated in Europe. They observed the American models for insurance companies, and honestly, if you go to Dubai, if you go to Saudi Arabia, I walk in these places. I worked in those kind of companies for a long time, and it just feels right immediately. It's not. We go to a lot of places. We do business in places like Nepal. I don't want to go into too many of these. There are some places that you really wonder sometimes. You really have to take people and lead them by the hand and say, this really has to be done. We have to do it. That doesn't happen in the Middle East. It's not only it's not only that they know what things are like here or that they are in Europe, but the people are sensitive and they're intelligent and they're nice people to work with. So, you know, we don't encounter, in fact, the same kind of problems that we do in China, for example, or India. And we're in both of those countries. It's hard to think. I think there are some countries that people would not suspect maybe that the medicine is as good as it is. The Philippines, for example, the medicine, if you know where to go, is excellent in the Philippines. I don't think people identify the Philippines as a place where you'd like to evacuate people. But nonetheless, if you know the right places, it's a very good place to go. But the Middle East as a region, I mean, you would have to think of it as a place where, for us, looking at the kind of clients that we will write, which is big, solid insurance companies that have hundreds of thousands of people to cover. It's really not much different than being right here. And they're in lockstep. I mean, a company like, someone just said Metropolitan Life. Metropolitan Life is the company that bought American Life Insurance Company from AIG. And I knew that company very well before MetLife was involved in it. But that's a good example right there. They walk in, they do a little due diligence. And I mean, sometimes due diligence can take forever. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that. It can just, sometimes it'll queer the whole deal, but not there. No problems like that.
Interesting. I want to make sure we have time if anybody has any questions, because there's only 5 or 6 minutes left for this particular panel. So anybody thoughts? Because I can keep asking questions, but I don't want to dominate it if anybody else has anything to wonder about. Well, you guys are making this sound really easy, like really conducive and everything. So, is it as easy as we seem to be discussing, or kind of what should American businesses have on their minds when they really think about expanding or opening up markets in the Middle East?
Sure. I mean, every country is different, and there are some challenges. One of those, again, as I said, was the state is the major buyer of